So Black Lagoon at first follows Rokuro Kojima, who's this Japanese businessman who lives a pretty pathetic life. He gets kicked around at work by his bosses and various other people. One day he's sent on a business trip to hand this information to some people. I forget who he was supposed to hand it to, but he never makes it there because his boat gets captured by the Lagoon Company, headed by Dutch, Revy, and Benny. And he gets taken by the Lagoon Company as a hostage to get some more money, but when they find out that his bosses really don't care about him, he decides to not go back to his old life and continue his life with these bandits under the name Rock. And thus begins our descension into a living hell called Ranapur. Now I've heard about Black Lagoon for a long time and I've been meaning to review it for quite some time because I started watching it back in 2011, but I never fully watched the entire series. I got caught up with life and school, you know how it is. And as I mentioned recently in my live chat, I started watching this YouTuber by the name of GR Arcada, and he reviewed Black Lagoon that got my interest back into the world of Black Lagoon. And I gotta say, I'm really glad that I saw that review and I decided to watch Black Lagoon again because it is a shit ton of fun. Like I mentioned in my intro, this anime has a bunch of hot girls who wield guns in this crime-infested city that is never a boring moment. A boring moment in Ranapur is like an exciting moment at the DMV. That's never gonna happen. Not when you have a city filled with a bunch of cartels, the triads, the Russian mafia. Anything could go down. And one thing that I really liked and appreciate about this show is that they don't sugarcoat anything. They show this dark world for what it is. It's a really shitty place. And that's one of the greatest things about this show. They don't sugarcoat anything. They show you just how cruel, detestable, and brutal this world can be. I mean, just look at the events that happen in this anime and the characters' backstories and what the characters do. It is a really dark world out there. And in some sense, that's really how the world is like. You might not be able to see it, but that's exactly what is happening right now in the world. But enough of this preachy shit, let's talk about the show. Honestly, I loved all the characters. Of course, I'm gonna mention Revy first because how do you watch Black Lagoon and not mention Revy? This foul-mouthed, gun-toting Chinese babe who just is so much fun to watch. And she honestly doesn't give a fuck about anything or anybody. I mean, this girl will literally go into a building, shoot up a bunch of people, and then go to the bar later on and get a drink as if nothing ever happened. You know what? No, I scratched that. She does care about one thing in this entire show, and that's actually Rock. And her relationship with Rock is very dynamic. And although the relationship is not clearly defined, I mean, it's not platonic and it's not romantic, it's somewhere between the two, they do have a really strong bond and they really have strong chemistry. And then we got Rokuro Okajima, aka Rock. He's pretty much the conscience of this entire show. I mean, he's the one with the morals, he's the one with the integrity, and his integrity and morals gets challenged throughout this entire series, to the point you think he's gonna crack at any moment. Which I wouldn't blame him for, because if you were a person with high morals and you lived in a detestable city like Ranapur, it's only a matter of time before you fall into the darkness. And a couple of times in the series I actually thought he was gonna fall into the darkness, but one thing that's very resilient about Rock is that he can keep his morals, he can still stay in the light, and that takes true strength. And I gotta say, the number of badass chicks in this anime is just astounding. I mean, just picking one badass chick within this entire series is insane. Obviously you got Revy, and then you got Roberta, who's this maid from South America who comes into the series, and she's referred to as the Bloodhound, and man, she is insanely good at her job. Not the maid job, but the killing job. Like, oh my god. And then you got Edda, who's a nun at the ripoff church, who's more than meets the eye. Then you got Balalenka, who's this badass Russian chick with these scars. I mean, she is insanely good at what she does as well. She basically leads this Russian militant force that are so good at what they do that I would never want to get into a fight with these people ever. And then you got a bunch of miscellaneous badass chicks, like this one Chinese girl with a really thick Chinese accent. Revy refers to her as Chinglish, which is pretty funny. In the OVAs, you got this really small maid who's really good at capoeira. She kicks ass. I mean, there's just so many to name that it would take forever to list them all. But that's not to say there's no badass guys in this anime. Chang? That guy is really cool. But we really don't see him get into a lot of gunfights that much, which really sucks. The animation is obviously good. I don't really need to spend too much time on that. Another thing that I really liked in this show is that they actually gave some of the badass chicks like backstories, like you learn about why they became what they became. And I actually like seeing that. I appreciate that. I mean, Revy got her backstory, Balalenka got her backstory, Roberta got her backstory, all of which were pretty tragic. The music overall is nothing that really stands out that much, but the opening theme is freaking badass. Every time I hear that, I just like pretend like I have this gun and I'm just like pointing it at something and like hear that song and go bang bang. Yeah, I'm weird like that. Get off my back. I bet you would do it too if you had a toy gun like this. And the last thing that I really liked about this anime was the voice acting. I thought it was really superb, especially on the part of Revi. I don't really know the voice actress's name. I'll put her name right here and I'll put a picture right here too. But she was badass. Now, as much as I would love to give this anime a 5 out of 5 merely for the action and badass characters alone, I can't do that because I do have a few problems with this anime. First off, you may have noticed how I mentioned Rock and Revi throughout this entire review, but did you notice that I haven't mentioned Benny or Dutch at all yet? And it's not because I hate them, it's because they don't really stand out in the anime. They're like side characters when they're part of the main crew, which is the Lagoon Company. We don't get an understanding of Dutch or Benny, their backstories, how they met, anything about them. All we know is that Dutch is this really buff black guy who really talks cool, and Benny's like the geeky nerd and he's Jewish. That's it. I really would have loved to see more episodes with them as the main focus. Or maybe just have the crew together like in the first season it was really geared towards the Lagoon Company. In later seasons like the second season and the OVA, they kind of are on the back burner and they're not in the anime that much. Which is a damn shame because I bet you Dutch's backstory will be pretty interesting. And speaking of backstories, I really would have loved to see Chang's backstory. I mean, we explored it a little bit in Roberta's Blood Trail, but not too much. I mean, we get a little glimmer of it. And probably the biggest problem that I have with this anime, and it was also mentioned by G.R. Arcada, is the anime's endings. They leave you very unsatisfied. Especially after I watched all 2 seasons and the OVAs. The OVA ends to the point where you're like, really? That's how it ends? It's kind of disappointing. I mean, we get the resolution inside the story of the anime, but we don't get resolution with all of our characters, only like some characters here and there. And they gave us a big tease at the end of the OVA, which kind of made me very angry. I don't want to say what it is, it's just, it kind of irritated me. And another thing that kind of bothered me about this anime, now this isn't a con, it's more of a personal problem, is the nickname they gave Revi, which is Two Hands. What, they couldn't think of anything more clever than Two Hands? I mean, come on. But overall, although this anime does have its fair share of problems, I thoroughly enjoyed Black Lagoon. I mean, it has some awesome action scenes, kick-ass babes, compelling stories, dark themes, and overall, it's just a fun time. And that's why I'm going to give this anime a 4 out of 5 stars. I think it's definitely worth watching. And if you have not seen Black Lagoon, go see it. But anyway, what did you guys think of this anime? Did you like it a lot? Or did you find it boring and you've seen better action animes? And let me know who is the biggest badass in this anime in your opinion. Comment below, let me know.